Hey guys, Master Lincoln here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so the legendary Vegeta event is going to be coming out on Global in just over 12 hours time by the time this video comes out. And so I thought I would do a little team building guide for all of the special missions that will be dropping with the event. Obviously, if you, as you play for it for the first time and you beat the stages, you'll get a few stones and some of the tickets for that Vegeta banner. But there are missions for beating it with specific teams. This works just like the ones from the Goku event, so you have to have all 6 units on your team have to be in the category. The friend unit doesn't count, so there are some places where you could use a friend who is actually not on the specific category, but whose leader skill does cover everybody else on the team, who could be useful, and then obviously that will still count for you completing the mission. So we have Mastered Evolution, which is the new category that the Super Vegeta brings out. Powerful Comeback, Otherworld Warriors, Worthy Rivals, Siblings Bond, Join Forces, and Gifted Warriors. So usually when I go through my team building guides, I list off a whole bunch of top picks and honorable mentions. I go through quite a lot of units. Each one of those team building guides is normally like at least 15 minutes long, so I'll be doing a slightly less detailed version so you can have all of them in here. I'll put timestamps in the comments so you can skip straight to the specific mission if there's a specific one that you want to see, but I will go over a lot of the top picks and honorable mentions. I just won't have all the details up for like all the units, right, all the separate wiki pages, but I will go over the units that will be super useful for that particular category mission, as well as try and talk about some units that you can use if you do not have the actual specific category leader, because obviously that first one is a great example. The new Super Vegeta that's coming out is the only leader for the Mastered Evolution category, so if you don't pull him, there are other ways you can still make a Mastered Evolution team. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump straight into the first one. Make sure you hit the like button if you find the guide useful at all. Do subscribe to the channel if you are new as well. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so Mastered Evolution is the first mission, and as we said already, this is the category that is brought to us by the release of the new Super Vegeta. There's not that many LRs on it, but there's a pretty big pool of units that definitely feature some solid picks. So the couple that I picked out here, obviously Super Vegeta himself. Like if you do pull him, he's going to be the best leader for the category just because he has one of the better leader skills. Now, being that the final phase of the Vegeta event is obviously against the AGL Blue Evolution Vegeta, probably a bit risky to put this guy in slot 1. Obviously, to get his full potential, you have to get him to take a hit in slot 1. As soon as he takes the first hit, he gets an extra 50% attack and defense. This means in harder content, just like units like Physical Beerus, Physical Angel Frieza, when he takes that first hit, he's going to take a little bit of extra damage. So if you get unlucky and the first attack of the turn that he has to take is a super, then obviously he takes quite a lot of damage. And if you're in that final phase against AGL Blue Evolution Vegeta, if you put this guy in slot 1, you don't have like a Whis active or something like that, and he gets super attack, you will probably die. Almost definitely, in fact, unless you, I don't know, if you've already got him like rainbow level 10 links with like defensive equips and stuff, but you probably die without a damage reduction item. So he can still be very good in slot 2 or 3, because obviously he does get the extra 50% attack and defense on super attack as well. So after supering, his defense is decent. He does also get guaranteed crits on super, so it doesn't matter that the last guy is AGL, he'll still be able to do decent damage. And then he has that active skill to give him extra damage for 1 turn as well. So obviously he dishes out a ton of damage, and he is the technically the actual leader for the category. But as I said, there are ways to work around this. So one of the next units I wanted to highlight was Gohan. Obviously, even if you have Vegeta, this guy would probably be an auto include on the team. One of the best LRs for like long-term stacking in these long form events. Like obviously, there's the big meme that you can never transform him, but by the time you get near to the end of the event, even in the Super Saiyan 1 form, his defense is going to be ridiculously high. He's got a good link set. Obviously, the rest of the team, you're probably going to be going for a full Saiyans build, because pretty much all of the Super type characters on here are Saiyans in some variety, so his link set is obviously going to be very, very strong. You can't transform him at all, but he's still good in his Super Saiyan 1 form. Next up, we have the AGL transforming Goku. So obviously post EZA, his leader skill is for super types 3 key 130. So if you really are struggling to put together a team under one specific leader skill, then obviously you can use this guy and just run a full super types team. As he transforms up through the various forms, obviously his defense just keeps getting better and better, and he gets more damage reduction. So by the time you get to the end, like post super attack, he's still going to be really, really tanky. Again, like the one thing you have to keep in mind with this event is that when you get to that final phase against Blue Evolution Vegeta, a unit that is not like a dedicated tank getting hit with a super attack by him without a damage reduction item is going to take a lot of damage and potentially die if you're not on like full health. So this guy's defense is going to be really good by the end, especially with the damage reduction, but you can't rely on him to like tank supers without items and stuff like that. But obviously he's an older unit, so a lot of people potentially are going to have him with dupes, link leveled already, so he's a very solid option for the team even if you're not using him as a leader. So next up, another unit I wanted to highlight was this Super Saiyan 2 Angel Vegeta. I really like this unit. I know people think he dropped off like fairly quickly, but I think he's underrated. I think he's really good. In harder content like this, obviously as you get towards the end, you can use the strategy of deliberately going for his 12 key super, so you get the defense raise. Obviously if he gets an additional super at any point, that's always going to be the 12 key. So I mean, you know, as you get towards the end of the event, the ideal turn really for this guy is hitting his 12 key and then additionaling, so you get the double defense raise. But obviously he can be very good. There's a couple of Gokus on this category that fulfill the Majin Buu Saga category Goku that can give him his full potential, including like his active skill, his unit super, all that kind of stuff. So I think he can be solid. He's not like the best unit on the team that if you bring him he guarantees you win the run, but I think he can still be very, very good here. And of course the category includes these Easy A Super Saiyan 2 Gokus. The AGL one is on there as well. This is the one I usually choose to run. I run this guy alongside that physical Angel Vegeta because he buffs all allies defense, and then he buffs Super Saiyan 2 category allies attack, so he's still going to be giving Vegeta the attack buff. The AGL one is the same but the other way around, so obviously if you have any units who aren't Super Saiyan 2, he's not giving them a defense buff, and in this harder event type strategy you kind of want to get defense for everybody, so I like to run this guy. Also he stacks defense on super, whereas the AGL one stacks attack, so this guy's just all around better defensively. He stacks defense for 6 turns, so obviously if you get a double super, you get that double defense raise within that same turn. So again, like his defense can hit some reasonable levels, but he's not another one of these units that's not going to be like tanking super attacks at the end or anything like that. So next up we have the Int Gotenks. I really like this guy. Like on turn 1 he's not great, right, because he does greatly raise defense on super, but he doesn't really do anything else. But as soon as you get to the next turn and he becomes a Super Saiyan, he's really good. He can super attack multiple times and each one greatly raises his defense, so even if you're using him as like a slot 3 floating unit, he's going to be able to hold his own in that slot, as well as dealing reasonable amount of damage. Obviously you can't stun in this event, and then of course as you get further and further into the event, I always normally save this up for like either the second to last phase or the last phase. You can go ahead and transform into the Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, and then he greatly raises attack and defense for 3 turns on super attack, and he has a great chance of launching an additional super for 4 turns, which is why you want to save the transformation for closer to the end, because then obviously you have that 70% chance to double super, double defense raise, and that's going to be a lot more beneficial in those later stages when the enemy is hitting you a lot harder. So I definitely think he could be a good pick for this as well. Next up we have the 2 Resurrection of F Goku and Vegeta units, right? So these guys are infinite stackers that change orbs. So I remember when the Goku event first came out, the original one with UI as the boss, like these guys were super, super useful because not only are they stacking all the way through, so obviously by the time you get to the end, their defense is going to be pretty decent. They also have the nuking style passive. If you pick up the same type orbs, the buff they get is much bigger, and they do create their own orbs as well. So what this means is later on in the event, these guys can actually give you a ton of free healing because they are creating those orbs, and then their defense is so high that each one they pick up is giving you a decent amount of health back. So depending on who you're bringing on the team and who's going to link best, obviously they're both really good. Vegeta is going to have type advantage over the final phase, but there is the God Vegeta is Int, so you obviously want to make sure that he's going to be pretty built up by then. Pre-Super, they still take a fair bit of damage, especially in the earlier turns. So you just want to make sure you grab as many orbs as you can. Honestly, you could bring one or both of them just to use as 3rd slot floating units, and then they would be able to do a little bit of damage as well as give you a bit of a heal. So Those are like the top picks. If we have a look down, if you're missing a ton of these units, you can make an extreme team if you use the tech transforming freezer, because as you see here, you can bring basically all the freezers, right? So tech freezer, then you got the 2 golden freezers that have the damage reduction, int golden freezer. Angel Golden Freezer is a little bit too outdated, I think, defensively. Then you got the physical Angel Freezer, this movie boss's support freezer, or you could bring, I guess, them, but they're obviously not very good either, and the last phase is AGL, so a bit risky. But yeah, there's a ton of good units on here, and there are a few options for a lead if you don't pull the new Vegeta. So that is Mastered Evolution. Let us go ahead and look at the next one. Okay, so next up we have Powerful Comeback. This is the category led by the LR Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta. Honestly, I think the best way to build a team for this one is probably going to be largely focused around Reps of Universe 7 or Universe Survival Saga. Because, I mean, if you just look at the LRs that are on here, like all of the big hitters from Reps of Universe 7 are here, right? So you've got the UI Gokus, Blue Evolution Vegeta, Roshi, the Blue Boys, like, and then obviously as you go down into the SSRs or to the TURs, the Goku and Piccolo, Gohan and Piccolo are on here. The support UI is on here, who's an infinite stacker. Obviously the other EZA UI who stacks as well. So representatives of Universe 7 / Universe Survival Saga, I feel like is probably the best way to go. So, obviously, Blue Evolution Vegeta, people do, I feel, underrate him quite a bit. He definitely does have his flaws. Kind of like what we were talking about with the Super Vegeta for the Mastered Evolution guide. Like, if you're putting him in slot 1 and then the first attack is a Super, then obviously he's going to take quite a bit of damage because he builds up damage reduction with each hit that he takes. So, obviously, you don't really want him to be getting hit with a super attack straight away. He obviously has the same super attack effects as the UI Goku, where he gets the 50% chance to crit, which stacks. So, if he gets an additional, which he does have a chance to do built into his passive, then the additional will guaranteed crit. And then, obviously, if you do get a third super, if you have dupes or additional skill orbs, that will be a guaranteed crit as well. So, he can push out quite a bit of damage. He is a bit wonky compared to Goku, like on the team in terms of getting key. I've noticed it can be difficult to get his 18 key super sometimes. Obviously, his active skill attack, because it's an AoE, it doesn't do as much damage to a single target, so it's not going to be crazy powerful. The one thing he definitely has over Goku for this strategy, like if you are using this team just with double Blue Evolution Vegeta leads, obviously his revival skill is a lot easier to activate because you only have to receive 7 attacks. And obviously in a long form event, by the time you get near to the end, you're probably going to have both of the Vegetas with their revival skill active. So that can obviously come in clutch and help you out, especially if you get nearer to the end. If you get one of them on rotation with their revival skill active and you're on really, really low health, rather than potentially wasting one of your healing items and then finding yourself later on in a situation where you've got really low health and you don't have a revival character on rotation, it might be worth just taking the hit there, getting the revive, and then saving the heal for a little bit later. So obviously revival skills, when you can get them off, are really, really good for these difficult longer form events. So UI Goku is the next one up. Now, UI Goku, when it comes to the difficult events like the GT Goku event and this Vegeta event, the main thing you have to remember is the fact that he cannot dodge in the final phase. So this is going to affect his performance like incredibly when it comes to his defense, right? Because his defense is okay at start of turn, and then obviously one of the main things that he gets is every time he dodges, his defense goes up. So obviously in this final fight against the Blue Evolution Vegeta, you can't dodge, so he can't get any of those defense ups. And obviously you can't dodge, so you can't avoid the damage completely. So he will be taking damage in that final phase. I would imagine if you are going to run him on the team, I would use him as like a main rotation unit all the way up until the end, and then just float him off so that he's on rotation as little as possible. Or if you have to put him into a slot where there are a whole bunch of attacks, just make sure that you do have a damage reduction item, because like if he gets hit with a super attack, he's going to take a lot of damage. But other than that, I mean, what else do we need to say about AGL UI Goku? Still considered to be one of the best, if not the best unit in the game. So he's still going to be very effective up until that final phase, but then you need to be very careful about keeping him protected. So next up, I wanted to talk about Full Power Jiren. So Full Power Jiren, obviously he has a Universe Survival Saga leader skill, so you can bring him as the lead and then bring any of the other units that we've talked about, because obviously the Goku and the Vegeta, their leader skill won't cover, well, Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta will cover Jiren. But if you don't have him and you're using Goku, you can't use him as a leader and use Jiren because he doesn't fit on either of his categories. But you could use Jiren as a leader. Obviously, he's got pretty decent defense. When you get to the final phase, obviously, you're going to have type advantage. You have the active skill to give yourself a nice little attack buff as well. Obviously, you can't lower the enemy's attack in this event. I think literally you can only do it in like the first phase, and you can't stun. But that's still going to give him an attack buff. So when you get to that final phase against Blue Evolution Vegeta, he's potentially going to do a ton of damage. So he can be very useful on this team as well. Next up, we have our boy Roshi. So Roshi, of course, really, really good for the revival skill. His defense is pretty decent. He also has that built-in chance to dodge as well, which again, like the UI Goku, not going to be usable when you get to the very end. So you definitely need to be careful about him taking hits once you get to the Blue Evolution Vegeta phase. But also, his revival skill is one of the easiest in the game to activate. You only have to have 2 or more Turtle School allies on the team. So obviously, if you're bringing like 2 of the UI Gokus, for example, there you go. That's that fulfilled already, which again, like I said at the start of this particular section of the guide, this is why like the reps of Universe 17 will be so good for this, as long as you make sure you're only bringing the ones that are on powerful comeback. So he's also a Turtle School support unit, so he's going to be buffing the UI Gokus. So yeah, he's just a really, really good choice. I mean, with that reps of Universe 17, if you get the right luck with like AGL UI taking a couple of hits early on and you not taking too much damage, you have like 3 revival characters. So the chances of you being able to get actually one of them off and save yourself is a lot more likely, because the most annoying thing is when you only have 1 revival unit on your team, and then that time when you drop to like super low health, they're off rotation. So at least if you have a bunch of them in the team, you're more likely to actually have one on rotation when you actually need that revive for that first time. So definitely worth considering bringing him as well. Next up, we have the Namek Vegeta Exchange Goku. So this guy is very, very good. You can't use him as a leader, unfortunately. Although, I guess you might be able to make a full Planet Namek Saga team. But what I mean by this is you don't really want to, right? You'd have to make the full Namek Saga team, you'd have to bring some units that would not be good in this event. But he is very, very good. Raises attack and defense on both supers. So post-super attack, like his stats are very, very high. He has a revival as well, but his condition is a little bit more annoying to get. 29% or less HP at the start of the turn can be very tricky to get to sometimes. And then, of course, if you do get the revival into Goku, then Goku is just even more powerful, greatly raises on his 18 key. So post-super attack, obviously, he's very, very strong defensively. Unfortunately, these later parts of his passive, like he gets damage reduction against an extreme class enemy. Now, you're not fighting an extreme class enemy, so you don't get that. That would have been a nice little bonus for this, but overall, he is still very, very powerful. And obviously, in the Vegeta form, he is going to share a couple of links with some of the other Vegetas on the team. If you're running a largely Reps of Universe 7 or Universe Survival Saga team, though, obviously, he's not going to share a ton of links with them, but they do have, like, Prepared for Battle, Fierce Battle, Legendary Power, so they are going to have some links with some of these other Saiyan units that you bring on the team. So, and then last but not least, as an honorable mention, of course we have to talk about Tech Gohan. I mean, basically the king of TURs in long form events. The only downside to him, the reason he's not mentioned right at the start of the list is, of course, you can't run a Hybrid Saiyans team for this powerful comeback, because there are some Hybrid Saiyans on here, but a lot of them are ones that you just can't really run in this event without getting destroyed. So he himself will be really good on the team, because obviously he is under Blue Evolution Vegeta's leader skill. You know, we've all seen his performance since his release. He doesn't exactly need to have a ton of links active for him to be really good. You just start getting him built up right from the start, and by the time you get to Blue Evolution Vegeta, I mean, he's going to have like 1 million defense potentially, and he's got type advantage, so obviously he is a very solid option for the team as well. So those are the top picks for powerful comeback. Obviously there's a lot of other good LRs on here like Gogeta. There's not a lot of great link partners for him, but obviously he could be really good here. The physical Gogeta, you could use him as a link partner with. They're starting to get a little bit outdated, but they do of course offer you that 50% heal and the transformation once you get a little bit further into the event and you've taken some damage, so they can be good. Obviously Namek Goku as well stacks. He should have been an honor. I should have brought his details up, but you can't use his lead, I don't think. But he infinitely stacks. He's really good as well. In fact, because of the way the last phase works, it's probably better to run him over the UI Gokus. I didn't mention the STR one, again, because in the last phase you can't dodge, and then he's going to have type disadvantage, so that's not great. The LR Blue Boys I still think are really good. They raise defense on their supers. If you're getting a bunch of rainbow orbs and getting multiple supers, then their defense is actually going to be really good. And then in terms of TURs, AGL Bardock gets memed on all the time now, but he is an infinite defense stacker, so that can help you out. Int Gogeta has that chance to dodge if you get rainbow orbs, but again, you can't use that in the last phase. So there's, as you can see, there's quite a few TURs here that are decent in some events, but like not really super good for the long form events. So I feel like to have the best chance with Powerful Comeback, you're going to have a very LR heavy team. So, but yeah, that's Powerful Comeback. Let us go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, so Other World Warriors. I feel like this is probably the one that people are going to struggle with the most. We talked about this last night on the 5-9 podcast, or if you're watching this video as soon as it goes up and you missed that, that will be up on the 5-9 channel in a few hours. But this is the one that we kind of all agreed will probably be the hardest for a lot of people, because there's not a lot of super great units for this event on this team. So we'll go through some of them here. Obviously, one of the better leaders is going to be the physical Angel Frieza. He is an infinite defensive stacker. He has that same sort of thing we were talking about with the Super Vegeta, where obviously he has to take a hit in order to get a little bit of extra defense. So you've got to really hope that that first attack that he takes isn't a super. But then he gets the extra attack and defense as well as a medium chance to dodge for 5 turns after he takes that first hit. So that is actually really good. Obviously, he can't dodge when you get to the last phase, but by that point, you know, his defense is going to have stacked up incredibly high. You can transform him whenever you want, but once you transform into Angel Golden Frieza, he does no longer stack defense. So basically, you don't want to transform him until you get a lot closer to the end. It's up to you when you want to transform him, but once you start hitting the regions of like 400-500k defense, you're probably safe to transform him at that point. Or you could just go all out, literally just wait till the last phase, and he's probably going to have like 800 or maybe even 1,000,000 defense at that point, and then you can transform him. And obviously he's going to do a little bit of extra damage. You can't stun, of course. And then once he's transformed, he does have damage reduction when your HP is 49% or less. So that is also quite useful. If you get into a turn a little bit later on, where he's got a reasonable amount of defense, and you find yourself in a position where, you know, there's like almost all of the attacks, if not all of the attacks, are in one slot, and you are on 49% HP or less, you could then choose to pop the transformation with him, put him in that slot, and then not only has he already got really solid defense, that damage reduction is going to be active, and he's going to be able to tank all of those hits and let you heal up next turn. So he definitely can be very good for this. Probably the better leader. His leader skill is 4 key, HP attack and defense 150. So the extra key, definitely very helpful, especially if you have to bring some units who aren't necessarily going to link up with each other super well. Because the other leader for Otherworld Warriors is this Int Super Saiyan 2 Goku that transforms to Super Saiyan 3. His leader skill is 3 key and 170 across the board. So I guess technically his leader skill is better because it has the higher percentage. But he's probably the worst unit out of the two between him and Frieza. So I guess it's up to you which way you want to go with that. If you're going to use him as a leader and you do have Frieza, obviously I would say bring Frieza on the team as well. But in Super Saiyan 2 form, he's okay. Obviously he's dropped off a bit now. As long as you get the 3 orbs, so he gets a little bit of extra defense, then he's not going to be too bad. And then obviously once you get to an enemy whose HP is 80% or more, so basically all throughout the event, once he's on the first rotation of a new phase, you're going to get that transformation. Sometimes it's really annoying where you get to a new phase and then you do too much damage to the enemy and he's on the next turn and you get stuck in a rotation where he takes ages to transform. But once he transforms into the Super Saiyan 3 Goku, obviously his stats all increase. If you get 3 orbs, he has the 33% chance to dodge, which can be really useful. But again, of course, you can't use that in the final phase. And then if you get 6 orbs, he's effective against all types, so he's just going to do a little bit of extra damage. Definitely have to be very careful with him when you get to the last few phases, especially the last one when you can't dodge, because he doesn't raise defense on super or anything like that. And with that dodge cancelled out, like, he'll still defend reasonably well. Like, he's going to take damage from normal hits, right? He's not going to be taking like double-digit damage from normal attacks. And so, of course, that means taking a super for him is really, really dangerous. So if you are using him, when you get to that last phase, probably need to try and keep him protected with items. So next up, we have Tech Gogeta. So we didn't talk about them in great detail for the previous one, but they definitely fit a lot better onto this team. There are a lot of fusions and connected hopes characters, so you could use them as a stand-in leader. You might have to wait 1 or 2 concessions for slightly weaker units, but you could use them as a stand-in. Obviously, they're just great in these kind of events. They have damage reduction, they raise attack and defense on super attack. Their transformation condition is a little bit more annoying to get, but, you know, as you go through the event, once you get later on, obviously you want to conserve your items, but you're going to get to a point later on in the event where it probably is going to be tactically beneficial to heal, and then that can always be the thing that pushes you to the 70% or more, so you can go ahead and get the fusion. Obviously, once you fuse with them, you do get that extra little heal as well, so you don't really want to have to heal in order to get the transformation, because you're wasting that little extra part of their effect. But if you want to get them to transform, that is obviously a way you can do so. Still raises attack and defense on super attack. Obviously, then he becomes a lot more powerful. Attacks effective against all types. Great chance to crit. Changes key spheres to rainbow. Gets extra key from rainbow orbs. He has damage reduction, and then you get the foresee enemy super attacks for 5 turns. When the enemy is hit by the ultra super, he nullifies unarmed super attacks. I don't think any of the Vegeta phases count as an unarmed. I'd have to double check, so you're probably not going to see that all that much. But the Scouter effect is obviously super useful. Sad that it's only 5 turns instead of the 10 turns from Vegito, but if you wait to transform him until nearer to the end, then obviously that's going to potentially help you secure victory, because for those last few turns, you're going to get to see where all the super attacks are. So he's definitely going to be very useful. And then we have the physical 3-year Gogeta. I mentioned them again briefly in the previous section, but whilst they're not the best anymore, they're still relatively decent. Like, I mean, linked up with the tech one, even with or without support, they can still hit like 3-4 million attack. Their defense is not terrible. And then the one thing they are going to offer you, which can be very useful, is from the 6th turn onwards, if they come onto rotation and you've dropped below 50% HP, they will then fuse into Gogeta and give you a full heal. So obviously, if you get to the point where you have like both of these guys fused and on rotation together, you're going to be throwing out a ton of damage, because obviously he has attacks effective against all types as well, pretty decent stats, and then he gets a ton of extra key from rainbow orbs, which the other Gogeta is also creating potentially. So like, these two together are going to be dishing out a ton of damage. This guy specifically, though, like, he's not going to tank attacks particularly well, especially supers. So you obviously want to be using the Tech Gogeta as the tank, and then this guy in the slot where there are the fewer attacks, and keeping him protected with items, especially using the Scouter effect from this guy. If you're in the final phase, obviously you want him to take the super because he's got type advantage, but that effect will allow you to see who to put where. Like, if you're against the Int God Vegeta and you can see the super attack, you could put this guy in the slot instead. So these two together are obviously going to be very good. Next up, we have the Pycon. So Pycon is going to be really good as a support unit. He greatly raises his attack. He also has the unit super, which you're going to be able to get from those various fusing Goku and Vegeta units, because the character has to have the Angel Goku or Angel Vegeta in the name. So he's effective against all types with the unit super. That helps him to do a little bit of extra damage. Now obviously he has that style passive with the picking up rainbow orbs, gives him extra key and a chance to dodge, and then picking up free type orbs gives everybody else on the rotation a support buff. So I refer to using him as a support unit, but obviously you have to be able to get those 3 orbs in order for him to do so, but then he is going to be very useful. That dodge chance is obviously going to be very nice up until the final phase when you cannot dodge. But what I would recommend doing if you are going to bring him is saving the active skill that he has, which is when facing only one enemy whose HP is 50% or more starting from the 4th turn. I would save this for the final phase when Pycon is not going to be able to dodge. The first turn that you go into where you have Pycon on rotation against that Blue Evolution Vegeta, just use his active skill then and get rid of all the attacks. And that will keep him protected for that turn. And then the next time he comes back on rotation, you're either going to have to put him in a slot where there's no hits or use like some sort of damage reduction item. But he definitely is going to be very useful for the team. Next up, we have the AGL Angel Cell and the Tech Angel Freezer. Now, These guys are units that I feel like nobody really ever uses because of how weirdly they were designed. They get the best buffs they get from their passive, they only get when all allies are in the Other World Warriors category. So obviously for this mission, this is the perfect opportunity to use them. They're both infinite attack and defense stackers, so by the time you get to the end of the event, obviously their defense is going to be reasonably high. Frieza is definitely the better of the two, because as long as you have all Other World Warriors on the team, he has 40% damage reduction. So when you couple that with the fact that he's stacking up his defense, he's actually going to be pretty good defensively. Obviously, being that he is an Angel Frieza as well, you can't link him up with the physical one until the physical one has transformed. But once they have transformed, they're obviously going to share some links, and then that rotation can potentially be really good. And then Cell is he's got attacks effective against all types when everyone's in Other World Warriors, which is not as great of a buff. It just means he can do a little bit of extra damage. As long as you get 2 rainbow orbs with him, he does also provide all allies with 2 extra ki, which could be useful. I'd probably use him as a 3rd slot float if you are going to use him on the team. The only downside, of course, whilst he does infinitely stack, is he is a nuking unit. So if you get into one of those situations where you get into a turn and you just can't get many orbs with him, then yeah, he's going to massively suffer from that. So that is something that you need to be careful for. So as you can see, not a ton of like super top picks. We did talk about the Angel Vegeta in a previous section. Like, he will be pretty decent. This Super Saiyan 2 Goku can be good for healing because he creates a ton of orbs and then heals from them. But like, his own defense is not particularly great. This Super Saiyan 3 Angel Goku actually is another really solid option. I keep forgetting that he's got his EZA already. So he is actually a really solid option. I'd probably choose to bring him over somebody like the Angel Cell or Frieza, especially if you are bringing a very Saiyan heavy team. And then of course Ink Goji is on here, who can be useful as well, just can't dodge in that final phase. But yeah, the extreme side really not so much outside of the leader. So this one's definitely going to be tricky, but hopefully you guys will be able to get through. So that is Other World Warriors, and let us move on to the next one. Okay, so next up we have Worthy Rivals. So this is the one I tweeted about the other day. I did put a video up on the channel. You know, there is a Vegeta leader for this, obviously, but you can actually make a full Vegeta team for this. So we'll go through some of the units here, but the straight up actual Worthy Rivals, like full category leader, is the Physical Piccolo, 3 ki, 150% to stats. He is an infinite defensive stacker as well, so obviously he can be really good for this event. If you want to, rather than doing like a full Vegeta team, if you have this Piccolo, obviously you could run double Piccolo leads and just have him as an off-rotation floating unit, or you can keep him on rotation for that infinite stack it up quicker, because he does have the ability to fuse with Kami when so HP is 70% or more with another Namekian ally on the team. Now the problem is, yeah, there are no other Namekians other than if you bring another Piccolo, but none of the other ones are really very good. I mean, this EZA one is like a defensive support, but is still not particularly very good, so probably not going to bring him. So he's not going to be able to fuse into his fused state, most likely. But in his unfused state, you know, you've got the infinite defensive stacking, but the most important thing is you have the foresees enemy super attacks, and it's just guaranteed, right? That's just part of his passive. He has the scouter effect. So obviously he can be really useful. He also recovers 7% HP whenever HP is 77% or less. That's not like a huge amount, but getting a nice little bit of free healing like every couple of turns in an event like this is obviously very good. So he's definitely very useful for this team. He's not going to link super well with everybody else, but he has a lot of great uses. Even if you want to run a mostly Vegeta team, like, he's definitely solid to bring on the team if he fits under the leader skill. Like, obviously if you're using him as the leader, or if you're using someone else, as long as he does actually fit into their leader skill, he can be very good. So we talked about the Super Saiyan 2 Angel Goku in the other section, well, a couple of other sections already, but the downside is I think he could still be okay, especially if you deliberately just go for this 12 ki super to get his defensive raise. The only problem is there are no Gokus on Worthy Rivals, because the whole point of the category is that they're Worthy Rivals to Goku. So you can't get the full potential out of this unit. Honestly, the only reason really I would suggest bringing him is because he is a Worthy Rivals leader, 4 ki and a 150. So his leader skill technically is better than Piccolo's. You get an extra ki. but I would say he's probably less valuable than Piccolo in the event overall. Not just because he doesn't infinite stack, obviously Piccolo sees supers, and yeah, you just can't get his full potential. But if you have to use him as a leader, he will still be a decent unit. Like I say, I would just recommend only going for his 12 key super, so you can have as much defense as possible. So next up we have this Vegeta, who is also a Worthy Rivals lead. He's probably like a last resort for if you want to run a Worthy Rivals team, like including other non-Vegeta units, but you just don't have a good Worthy Rivals leader, because 120 is a bit low on the leader skill side, but it still will be possible to beat him. We did talk about this unit in a previous one as well. He's an infinite stacker, he's a nuking style unit, he can give you a ton of healing from the orbs that he creates, especially later into the event when his defense is really, really high. You just have to be careful about him getting super attacked like early on, because he can be a little bit of a liability. I would probably use him as a third slot floating unit, or obviously with stacking units, you know, keeping them on rotation earlier on in the event so they can get more stacks is obviously helpful as well. But even as a third slot floating unit who's just kind of there to change orbs and give you a nice little bit of extra healing, he can be very useful. So next up we have GT Super Saiyan Vegeta. Now this guy is going to be like the main linchpin. When I made that video and I made that team of using a full Vegeta team, I used the LR Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. Now obviously it's a bit scary to run him because he has type disadvantage in the final phase. If you can't get his 18 key super, then he doesn't have good defense, and obviously with dodge being disabled, that means you can't counter super attacks either. So if LR Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta gets super attacked by the AGL Evolution Blue Vegeta, basically it will be GG. So if you do want to run a Vegeta family team, this guy's probably a more solid option for a lot of people because he has the Vegeta family leader skill, 3 key and 150. So this is probably the best way to make a full Vegeta team, is to run double leads of this guy, because obviously he's a very, very good unit in general anyway. Very good defense, changes orbs, which helps out the whole of the rest of the team. He's raising his defense on super attacks. Obviously post super he's really, really good defensively. He has the active skill, which is a little bit underwhelming, but you can do a nice little bit of extra damage with that. So he is super, super useful. And then one of the MVPs who links up incredibly well with that GT Vegeta is going to be this Tech Super Saiyan 3 GT Vegeta. I did the Rainbow Level 10 link showcase for him recently, and he was on that team, the full Worthy Rivals or Gifted Warriors team, because he has almost every single link except for Limit Breaking Form, which is the Super Saiyan 3 link, with that GT Vegeta. And yeah, you just basically get him hit a bunch of times early on, where he's not going to take as much damage, to fully max out his passive. And yeah, in the Rainbow Level 10 Link Showcase, when he was fully maxed out, he's hitting like 5 million attack stats with like over 300k defense. So he's really, really good for this. Obviously, you've got to be a little bit careful in the int phase, but then once you get to the final phase, you have type advantage. Like, this guy's going to be really, really good. So definitely recommend him, and he links up insanely well with him. Like, these two as a rotation is going to be crazy. So we also have this guy. So the Heroes Celebration gave us the Awakening for Xeno Vegeta, so he now greatly raises attack and defense on super. So this guy is actually crazy. Early on, if you get some supers with him, honestly, if you're running like the full Vegeta team, this guy could just take over and be the slot 1 tank, because once you get a few turns in, he's easily going to be clearing like 300k defense. So you could have this guy in slot 1, and then the GT Vegeta in slot 2, because obviously he's better after super attacking, talking about the int Super Saiyan GT Vegeta. And obviously this guy is then supporting him as well. So if you're running a lot of Vegeta units on the team, or honestly, even if you're not, this guy's just really, really good by himself because of the greatly stacking. So obviously he gets extra attack when there's another Vegeta family ally on the team, so he's going to be doing more damage if you have at least one other Vegeta family unit, which I feel like you probably will, right? Because Worthy Rivals is basically just like Vegetas and Piccolos and a couple of other people. So he's going to be super, super good for this build. And then, of course, we have the other Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta that released. He has the potential sometimes, I think, to be better than the Tech one. But overall, I'm not a huge fan because of some of his RNG. So he also builds up with each attack received. He's going to have very solid attack and defense. When I talk about the RNG, it's because he has a medium chance to guard. So obviously, if that does go off, he's going to be really good defensively. But medium chance is only 30%. And then if you're at 60% or less HP, you have a high chance to guard. And whenever he's guarding, you have 40% damage reduction. So it's not just the guard on its own. So even when, if you're on full health, if that medium chance to guard does go off, he's not only guarding, but he also has damage reduction. So then he's like one of the better tanks that you're going to have on your team. The only problem is obviously very RNG related, and you could basically never have his guard go off in the entire run. So I think because of that, I like the tech one a little bit more. But this guy and the tech one do also share pretty much the entire link set. The tech one has GT. I'm forgetting which one this guy has over GT, but they have almost the same link set as well. So he still also will be very, very good. Next up, we have Super Pycon. I thought I'd include him, obviously, from the heroes as well. He is an infinite attack and defense stacker that could also potentially get multiple super attacks. So you can start him off early, and then by the time you get to the end, have very high defense. The only problem, of course, is that the AGL Blue Evolution Vegeta at the end, he like greatly lowers your defense on super attack. So even if this guy has stacked up quite a lot, without an item active, he's still going to take a ton of damage from a super attack. But other than that, I do still think he is very, very good. So someone did ask me in the comments when I did that full Vegeta run, if you're missing like a specific unit, who can you sub in? Obviously, there's a ton of Vegeta units on this category. We talked a little bit about this Tech Super Saiyan Blue one, who I didn't use on my run. You have the Super Saiyan 2 Tech Vegeta, who will transform into Majin Vegeta. He can be good as long as you can get the 6 orbs consistently so that he can guard. But if you do run him alongside, say, the Int Super Saiyan 1, he creates orbs. So that's obviously, creates rainbow orbs. So that's going to make it a little bit easier for him to get 6 orbs. And yeah, there's a ton of Vegetas on here. The AGL Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta is still a really good option. Obviously, remember, he can't counter supers in the final phase. And again, the STR one, if you do want to run a full Vegeta team, he does have the better leader skill for Vegeta family. So you could run him as a lead and then a GT Super Saiyan Vegeta friend. So you still have 2 GT Super Saiyan Vegetas, but you have a slightly higher percentage leader skill, which just means everybody is going to be taking slightly less damage and hitting harder. You just need to be really careful about him in the final phase. And then AGL Pycon is on here as well, who we've talked about in the other sections. He can be really, really good as a support unit, but again, you just have to be careful in the final phase because he can't dodge. So that's going to be it for Worthy Rivals. Let us move on to the next one. Okay, so next up we have Siblings Bond, and I feel like if you have some of the units here that we're going to talk about, this is potentially going to be one of the easiest ones to do. So if we have a look at the actual Siblings Bond leaders, we obviously have the Go Bros. They're a little bit outdated now, but I still think they're really good. I do think people underrate them, but obviously they are starting to show their age a little bit. They do have type advantage over the final phase, which is nice. Once they're fully built up, they do have pretty reasonable defense. They can obviously fire off a load of super attacks. You also have the active skill that you can use when your HP drops below 59%, well, 59% or less, because you're only ever going to be facing one enemy, and then starting from the 3rd turn, so just at any point throughout the event, you could get some very nice timing and just get into the last phase and use this straight away to get a really strong start and do a ton of damage. So I still think they are really strong. Obviously, they have 4 key, 178 attack and HP and 150 defense, so their leader skill is really, really good. Even if you just use them as like an off-rotation unit or something, they are obviously going to be very, very strong. The other leader for the category that we have that would be worth using is, of course, the LR Tapion and Minosha. This is one of the LRs that I still don't have. They have a Siblings Bond lead, 3 key, 150 to stats. On their Ultra Super, they greatly raise attack, so, they can hit pretty hard. Obviously, in the final phase, they are going to have type disadvantage, so you do need to be careful, but they are a Siblings Bond support unit as well as a Storied Figures support, so if there are units that do have that crossover, they're going to be getting a little bit of extra support as well. They have a medium chance to do an additional super if you got their 18 key, and then they have damage reduction of 13% within the same turn with each super attack performed. So at their peak, obviously with their passive, if you're getting their 18 key super and then the additional from the hidden potential system, they can triple super, which then means they have 39% damage reduction, which is very good. They probably still get blasted by a super attack from Blue Evolution if you don't have a damage reduction item active as well, but that is pretty good. They do also have the active skill that gives all allies a buff, and it's for 2 turns, so it's like the B-Pan thing where it's calculated after all of their other buffs, so it does give a pretty significant increase, and it affects the following rotation as well. So you have to have a storied figures ally and a siblings bond ally on the team starting from the 4th turn. So basically the best way to get around this, and also the fact that he is their best link partner anyway, is if you are going to run these guys, is to run the AGL Tapion. So obviously AGL Tapion has very good defense, he has damage reduction, and then obviously they link up super well together. Also, if you drop below 50% HP, you can get the Hirudegarn transformation. Hirudegarn's not really going to do a huge amount of damage, especially in the later phases, but it's a couple of turns of free damage, I guess. And but yeah, really you're using him for his actual Tapion phase, and like I say, he's going to link up super well. This rotation of these two together, you just put this guy in slot 1, or whichever one has the majority of the attacks, because these guys aren't super great defensively, but those two together are going to be really good. Next up we have Tech Gohan. So the reason we're highlighting Tech Gohan, this is why this is going to be one of the easiest ones, because if you have Tech Gohan, you can very easily make a Hybrid Saiyans team that is all siblings bond, that is some of the like top Hybrid Saiyan units in the game, and you will easily like smash through this mission. Like if you can make a good Tech Gohan team, this will be the easiest one for you. Because obviously, as I said in a previous section, he's like the god TUR for long form events. By the time you get to the end, his defense is going to be insanely high, and in the final phase he has type advantage as well. So his team is just going to be absolutely ridiculous. Like we have a couple of the units I wanted to show here as examples. We have the GT Gohan and Goten, who are really good, and then of course the GT Goten and Trunks, who are slightly better. Like both those units are insanely good. Like these guys, obviously they support Goku family and Vegeta family, so they're going to be supporting all of these other like Gohans on the team. These guys only support GT heroes, so they're not going to offer a lot of support to anyone else. But even without that, I still use them in these difficult events because they are that good. So they're just an example. If we go back to Siblings Bond here, don't really want to use any of these guys. Blue Evolution Vegeta is on here. He's not going to have a ton of good link partners, but obviously he could be really good. The Extreme suite of units is pretty bad for Global, because like this guy doesn't have his EZA, for example. Darkness Toa is really good, but not obviously the best defensively, and she's more geared around supporting Extreme types. The physical Dabura is like an infinite stacker. Bergamo can be good for longer form events as well, but still not the greatest. And like these units just don't have a ton of link partners. But like, just look at all these good Hybrid Saiyans that are on here. We talked about the GT bros. We got the EZA Goten, who's really good. We got the let's have a look at the better ones here. The In Goten, I really want him to get his EZA, so he's probably not going to be super good for it. But we got the Super Saiyan 2 Great Saiyan Man who got his awakening, and the High School Gohan. Obviously, the last phase is AGL, so you have to be a little bit careful. But like, High School Gohan does have damage reduction. This guy is good as well. Very solid unit overall. Supports Super Type Buu Saga, so obviously he helps out Tech Gohan as well. And then when you get down to physical, you have like this guy got his EZA. He's pretty decent. The Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. There's a lot of really strong Hybrid Saiyan units on this team. And obviously later down the line, like this guy's going to get his EZA. You know, there's some very strong Hybrid Saiyans. There's if you could make like the exact perfect team, I would probably run like Tech Gohan, the 2 duo units that I talked about, this guy, and like the physical one. And like just by having the 2 Tech Gohans on main rotation and them doing the majority of the work, like this run is going to be pretty easy, as long as, you know, like this guy's not taking a super attack from Blue Evolution and Vegeta at the end or something like that. So Siblings Bond, definitely going to be very easy if you have the right units. I guess like any of these, it can be very tricky depending on what your box is like, if you're missing some of these key units. But Siblings Bond, if you have the right units, definitely going to be one of the easiest ones. So that's it for this one. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so next up we have Joined Forces. This is an interesting one because we have a couple of options for leaders, and then obviously this team has a lot of LRs. We've seen a lot of LRs release over the last like couple of years that are combinations of characters. And whilst they may introduce or be better on other categories, they of course are all on Joined Forces. So this one's going to be very interesting, obviously depending on your box and what units you do actually have. So one of the better leaders to start off with, of course, is the Blue Boys. They have the 150% and free key leader skill. They greatly raise their defense on either 12 or 18 key super, and then by picking up a bunch of rainbow orbs, they get additional normal attacks. The more additional normal attacks you get, the more likely you are to proc an additional super from their hidden potential system, and then of course that means another greatly raising defense. So if you can get them to double super, they will tank, like even from the Blue Evolution Vegeta, they will tank normal attacks with double digits. And then the only thing you need to worry about is a super attack. So they're pretty good. They got decent links. Their active skill does lower their defense. So I would suggest probably only ever using their active skill if you can get them into a slot where they're not taking any attacks. Because even on a turn where you double super and get the double greatly raised defense, their defense is still going to be considerably lower with the debuff that they get from their active skill. But it does guarantee them 24 ki, and they will be doing a lot of extra damage. So later on into the event, if you can get them into a slot where they're then not going to be getting hit, then it's definitely going to be worth it to use this and do a nice little bit of extra damage. I would honestly say use that as soon as you get the opportunity to do so, because if you're halfway through and you can use it when they're in a slot and they're not getting hit, I would just say go for it, because if you're trying to save it for like the last phase, you could then never end up in a situation where they can't take hits. So that's going to be really, really useful. Next up, we have the AGL Kale and Caulifla. So they have a slightly lower leader skill, 130%, but they do give 4 ki. Obviously, they are going to be really, really good. Like, remember when they came out and they basically just dominated the original Goku event? Well, they're basically going to do the same thing here, because obviously the enemy that we're fighting is a Universe Survival Saga and a Pure Saiyan enemy, which means they get 2 guaranteed additional super attacks every single turn. Now, in the early phases, the earlier forms of Vegeta, some of them don't count as a Universe Survival Saga, so they will only be getting the 1 guaranteed additional. But they do also get a guaranteed, like, normal attack as an additional. So they super, they normal attack, then they'll guaranteed get 1 additional super if you're fighting one of the forms that isn't a USS class. And then that obviously gives them multiple opportunities to trigger their hidden potential for a 4th super attack. And then obviously in those later phases where he is a USS unit, it means they could get 5 attacks in 1 turn. It's not 4 super, sorry, because 1's a normal. So they could get 4 super attacks and 1 normal attack in the same turn later on. And each one of them raises their defense. Also, the more times they attack, they get dodge chance as well. So all the way up until the final phase, not only are they going to have ridiculous defense, but they could potentially dodge. And then in the last phase, of course, you can't dodge, but then their defense by that point is going to be ridiculously high. So next up we have the everybody's favorite unit, Angel Golden Frieza and 17. Very weirdly designed unit. I'm not too sure what they were thinking with these guys. 3 ki and 150 is the lead. So if you are lacking another option for a leader, then obviously you can use them. They do raise attack on super or greatly raise for their 12 ki and raise on their 18 ki. They can launch 2 additional normal attacks, which obviously can then potentially help you trigger the additional super attack. The only problem is they basically have the same thing, the same issue that Blue Evolution Vegeta has, where they get damage reduction as well as crit chance that stacks up, but only within the same turn, and it's with each attack performed. So if you can get those 2 additionals off, and then you get the additional from their hidden potential, you can attack 4 times. That gives them 28% damage reduction, which is not bad. But then, of course, on the next turn, you have to start again. And if you get bad RNG, then you obviously don't have anywhere near as much damage reduction. They do have an active skill, gives them 7 ki, 77% defense, and guaranteed crits. And it can be activated after performing 4 or more super attacks. So you're pretty much guaranteed that you are going to be able to use this by the end of the event if you use them. I wouldn't really recommend using them outside of, like, as the last resort for the leader, though. So going on to some of the units, we have units like the AGL, Krillin and Gohan. I'm trying not to go over all the same units that we've gone over in previous sections. I know you might be here at this one just from the timestamp because you only want to see this one. So there are some other units that we won't necessarily talk about in this section, but we'll briefly go over those at the end. But the AGL, Krillin and Gohan are really, really good. Greatly raise attack and defense on their 18 ki super. They have a medium chance to dodge built in. They get extra ki per ki sphere, so obviously getting their 18 ki is really, really easy. And then they also launch an additional attack that has a high chance of becoming a super if you get to 24 ki, which is quite easy because of that ki passive. So they can be dishing out tons of damage. Their additional super will still raise defense as well, so really, really good. And then once you have performed 4 or more super attacks, you can change into the battle armor. Now, this happens automatically, so the one thing you have to keep an eye on, they have an active skill that guarantees they get 24 ki. So obviously that's then going to let this kick in, where they have the high chance to get an additional super. This can be used twice, technically. So you want to use this as soon as you can be activated from the start of the third turn. Use this, get 24 key, get the chance to do an additional super. That's then going to help you proc this, where you've performed 4 or more super attacks. Then they do the animation where they change into the Saiyan battle armor. And what this does is then refreshes the active skill. So now you're able to use the active skill again. So if you don't use it before they change into the battle armor, you miss that opportunity to get like an extra free usage out of it. So I would say, like, as soon as you get to turn 3 and it's available, just use it on that turn, and then you can get the most effectiveness out of them. Once they change into the battle armor, they just get a little bit of an increase to all of their stats and all of their abilities, so they just become slightly better. When you're at the 24 key, they have a higher chance for their additional to become a super. So really, really strong, really good. Obviously, they can't dodge in the last phase, but if you're getting multiple supers, their defense is going to be decent. So next up, we have the Goku and Vegeta. We talked about them in a couple of segments already. They're obviously very good. Damage reduction, they can get the transformation with the heal and the 5-turn scouter effect, but none of the other categories we've gone over so far have included the STR Goku and Vegeta that fuse into Vegeto. So if you run these two together, they have the exact same link set. So this rotation is incredibly powerful, and it is the only mission for the starting set of Vegeta event missions where you can actually run this rotation together. And then, of course, if you get to the point where, you know, 77% or less HP, very easy to do in this event, because, you know, once you get later in, you're going to start to get hit pretty hard. And then, of course, you can bring out Super Vegito. So Super Vegito's transformation is going to give you basically a full heal. And then, of course, that is then going to allow you, if you want, to then go ahead and also transform the Tech one into Gogeta, because now you're above the HP requirement that they have. It does mean you miss out on their little bit of a heal, because you've probably healed to full from Vegito. But now you have these two together, and whilst their links do change slightly, so they then don't share every single link, they do still share most of them. And that rotation of these two together is going to be absolutely ridiculous. Vegito, of course, gives you the 10-turn scouter effect. He counters normal attacks. Now, when you're in the final phase against AGL Blue Evolution Vegeta, you have to be very careful about how much damage he's potentially going to take, even from normal attacks. So you want to use the scouter effect to make sure, obviously, he's never going to get hit by a super. And then ideally, you probably want him to super attack first, so you can get that defense raise, so he can tank those normal attacks a little bit better. But that works out very nicely because, of course, Gogeta is tech, so you can put him in slot 1 where he has type advantage, and then Vegito takes over in slot 2. So really, really good. The other one I wanted to mention is the Saiyaman 1 and 2, free to play. They have their EZA on global. I say now, it's been a while. They are really good support for this team, because they do raise their defense on each super attack, so they can. Their defense is reasonably good. They have attack and defense 70%, but they give super class allies 4 key and 50% defense, which obviously they get as well. So their defense really is like 120. And then they're raising defense on super. They get an additional 58% attack and launch an additional attack that has a medium chance of becoming a super when attacking extreme class enemies. So unfortunately, that part of their passive is obviously kind of useless. Really, I would just say bring them as a support. Have them floating in the 3rd spot, giving everybody extra key and defense. Like this team, you're pretty much, unless you're missing like a lot of them, you're basically going to be able to run like a full LR team. So having a support unit that gives 4 key as well as 50% defense is obviously going to be very, very useful. Again, like a lot of the units in the game, if they get hit by a super from Blue Evolution Vegeta with no item active, they probably are going to take so much damage. You might even get one shot, so you do need to make sure that they are protected. But their defense will be reasonable. They'll be able to defend against normal attacks fairly well. So I think they're decent to bring as a support unit. And then the last one I wanted to mention, I guess I should have brought their page up earlier, because obviously they link up super well with the AGL LR. But Global, of course, recently got the Tech, Kale and Caulifla. So if you pulled them, they're going to work really, really well alongside the LR. You can get additional super attacks with them. build up a nice little bit of extra attack and defense. Of course, there is a Universe Survival Saga enemy in the later phases, so they're going to get that extra attack buff as well. And then once you get past the 6th turn, which of course in the Vegeta event you obviously are, you can then go ahead and fuse into Kefla. You get a nice 60% HP recovery, which is really good because their fusion doesn't have a HP requirement. So if you go into the turn where they're on rotation and you're like on quite low health, that 60% heal is going to be really, really useful. And then, of course, they do suffer from the good old Kefla mechanic of needing 6 or more orbs to get their full passive. That gives them an extra 60% attack. But even if you're not getting that, their kit is pretty good. 160 attack and defense, launches an additional attack that has a medium chance to become a super, high chance to dodge, which again, you can't use that in the last phase, but at least they have type advantage. And then they get an additional attack and defense 60% when attacking. So post super attack, their defense is obviously very good. They also are an infinite attack stacker once you're fused into Kefla. So if you have fused slightly earlier on, not only are you getting that dodge chance and everything, but yeah, you can stack up their attack potentially to quite an insane level. And then when you get to the AGL final phase, you're going to be doing a lot of damage. So yeah, a lot of joined forces units. There's a few free-to-play options for leads, but none of them really are good units in the event. It's a shame we don't have the EZA for the free-to-play androids. But yeah, there's going to be a few units on here that will be pretty good. Goku and Piccolo will be very good. I always forget about them because I don't have them. Obviously, the 3-year LRs, whilst they are a little bit weaker than their newer counterparts, they do have that full heal and fusion when you drop below 50%, which could be really useful. So they could be very good as well. Units like the Gohan and Piccolo, if you are bringing like the Blue Boys and other USS units, they're going to be pretty useful. Or sorry, Reps of Universe 7 units. So yeah, the joined forces, when it comes to TURs, there's like some that are okay, like Guasu and Zamasu give defensive support. They have dodge, which they can't do in the last phase, but I've noticed from like ESBR and stuff, like nowadays their defense is definitely not really up to scratch. So you're pretty much going to be looking at a full LR team if you want the full optimal build for this setup, but some of these TURs will be quite useful. So that is joined forces. Let us go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, so the final mission for the Vegeta event is Gifted Warriors, and of course this is the category that technically the only leader is the physical Goten and Trunks. They have returned on a banner on Global, so obviously the people out there are more likely to have them. They are a very good unit, especially in a longer form event where you can get them built up and have used their active skill on a decent turn. So they are Gifted Warriors lead, HP and attack 170, only defense 130 though, so that's something you have to be aware of. Some of your units are going to look like they're getting hit a little bit harder than on some of the other teams because they only have the 130 defense. But they have a unit super attack, which you're pretty much always going to get because their team pretty much revolves around being built around having other Trunks and Gotens on the teams. So they do very decent damage. They also raise allies attack. The only problem with this unit overall, really, is they're not a good slot 1 unit because as you can see, they basically get all of their stats when performing a super attack. So you don't really want them in slot 1. That's why we have units like the AGL Goten and the physical Trunks. So yeah, these guys, they have a great chance of getting an additional attack and defense 50%. Then they have a secondary proc of great chance of an additional attack and defense 50%. The only problem with this is you never know when it's activated, whether you've got 1 or 2 or none of those 2 buffs. The only way you can really tell is by keeping an eye on their stats every single turn. Obviously, when they get them both go off, then, especially post-super, their defense is really, really high. And then the other interesting thing about them and their mechanics is they get an additional 10% attack and defense up to 50% and chance of evading enemies' attacks 7% up to 30% with each attack evaded. But as you can see, in their base kit, they don't have any dodge. So if you have dupes, maybe you've given them 3 dodge or 6 dodge or something like that, but they have an active skill which can be used as long as there is a Trunks or Goten on the same turn from turn 3. That gives them 6 ki, so they're basically going to auto super, but they get a 100% dodge for that turn. So what you want to do in these longer form events is you want to try and wait until a turn where you're getting attacked. Usually for me, I try and wait for at least 4 but obviously the sweet spot is 5, so you can get this additional attack and defense 10% up to its maximum of 50. Wait until you can put them in a slot where there's 5 attacks, and then use their active skill, so they guarantee dodge all 5 of those attacks, and then max out their passive. And once their passive is maxed out, even with like at 55%, they hit ridiculously high attack stats, and their defense will be really, really good. So if you can get good luck and get a good run with these guys, with some good RNG, getting the active skill off early and getting a bunch of dodges, like you can actually get through quite quickly just based on the sheer amount of damage that these guys can actually do. So then we have the Tech Goten, who released a little bit later. I think he came out, was he on Vidal's banner? But he is the 40% support unit for Gifted Warriors. So obviously him on the team, 3 key, 40% attack and defense to everybody. He is a Gifted Warriors sub lead for 3 key and 120 if you don't have the Goten and Trunks or another leader that you can sub in. His defense is not the craziest, but he's got 150 defense at the start. He gets an extra 10% with each attack formed up to 50. So he's going to have 200% defense when he's fully maxed out. It's just that his stats aren't like crazy high, unless you've obviously got him like Rainbow level 10 links or whatever. But he can be very, very good as a support or a sub leader. Now I should mention obviously the fact that, as we said in the earlier section for worthy rivals, if you skip straight to this one and missed that one, you can run a full Vegeta team. I made a tweet about it. I made a video about it. So I'm not going to go over all of those units. So if you're missing some of these units and you want to try the full Vegeta strategy, look at the timestamps below. Go to the worthy rivals section, because I'm not going to go over all of those units again here. We'll go over them briefly at the end. But yeah, we have the physical Trunks and the AGL Goten with their EZAs. These units have been around for a while, so if you've been playing the game for a while, you should have these guys. I mean, I should say, like, if you're a newer player, you probably shouldn't be expecting to beat the missions on the Vegeta event, let alone beat the Vegeta event at all. So these units obviously have been around for a while. They're in the general pool. They're really good with their EZAs. They are better after supering, but they are good in slot 1. And obviously, because the physical Goten and Trunks can't really go in slot 1, your ideal rotations are going to be this guy in slot 1 and Goten and Trunks in slot 2 for 1 turn, and then this guy in slot 1 and the friend Goten and Trunks in slot 2 for the other turn. So very, very good. Then we have the full power Frieza that I wanted to mention. So because of his leader skill, Sworn Enemies or Planet Namek Saga, you can run him as a leader. You can run double leads with full power Frieza. Because you're fighting a super class enemy, he gets a bunch of extra attack. You're not fighting Goku, so he doesn't get a crit. But you can also use his active skill, because we have a super class enemy. You can use this as a finisher for one of the phases, because it does a ton of damage. You can only use it when the enemy has 30% or less HP. But this guy's an absolute animal, as I'm sure you know. We recently released the top 10 LRs released in 2021 list for 5-9 Gaming, and this guy was number 1. And personally, I do agree with him being number 1 over AGL UI Goku, just because he's a little bit more consistent. So he is an absolute animal, and with his leader skill, you can basically run like a full Frieza team, because there are so many Friezas that are on Gifted Warriors. And of course that includes this guy, who is the best like link partner for full power Frieza, and he's the 40% support unit for Sworn Enemies. So if we go back and look at the Gifted Warriors list, like as you see scrolling down here, we've got the Prime Battle Frieza. Bit risky to run him because of the final phase, but we've got all the golden Friezas are on here. Obviously this third one Frieza. This guy sadly doesn't have use in this event because there's not a Goku family enemy. But yeah, there's a ton of Friezas. The physical Angel Frieza that we talked about in Otherworld Warriors is on here. So if you're massively lacking the super types, you can run a crazy team with full power Frieza. And honestly, even if you have some of the super type options, if you have dupes and like, high link levels and stuff in all the Frieza units, then the full power Frieza team could potentially be even more effective because of how powerful it is. So yeah, and then of course for the super types we obviously have all the Vegetas. I talked about that, like I said, go back to the Worthy Rival section if you want to see the Vegeta build. But I mean, you can kind of see it here, right? Like this category just has tons of Vegetas. GT Super Saiyan Vegeta has a Vegeta family leader skill. You've got units like the Xeno Vegeta that supports Vegeta family, so you can very easily make a full Vegeta team. And if you do pull the new Vegeta, obviously he leads Mastered Evolution, which is one of the missions, but he is on Gifted Warriors and Worthy Rivals as well. So very, very good. So there's a lot of options for gifted warriors. So there you go. That is the final one. So that is all the missions. If you did watch all of them, shout out to you for making it all the way to the end. Let me know down below in the comment section what your teams are going to look like. And obviously, if you have any more suggestions for any of the other sections, if you think there's any units I missed out that I should have talked about at any point during the video, obviously let me know down below and we can discuss more team building options in the comment section. So I, for one, am super excited for this event to come out. I will be live streaming summons when it drops. It's 10:30 p.m. in the US, or at least PST. Obviously, if you're elsewhere in the US, it'll be slightly different. If you're in the UK like me, it's 6:30 a.m. Other parts of EU, it's like 7:30. I will be live to summon on the banner, and then we can try 1 or 2 runs on the actual event itself. But it's going to be very interesting. Good luck to anyone who is summoning. I am going to drop a video a little bit later on this evening towards the time the banner's going to come out, just talking about the banner in general. So if you're in 2 minds about summoning, maybe you want to summon on the step up banner but you're not too sure, if you want to try summoning for Super Vegeta, make sure you keep an eye out for that video as well. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.